say is for the last 15 minutes, I love to answer questions that you have, either in terms of your career and the path you want to take. I'm going to add some pieces of advice that I learned in the 22 years now that I've been in the business, that I think are like the core things that I learned that have allowed me to accelerate my career. And then let's talk about what's on your all's mind. If there are no questions, I'll get into what is real estate financial modeling, which is actually sexier than it sounds. I think it's pretty cool. But I'd understand if there's other topics y'all want to talk about. So let's talk about what I found to be some of the most valuable pieces of advice that I've gotten along the way. The first is this: your value in the marketplace, whether it's value to an employer, whether it's value to an investor, if you're out on your own, your value really is tied. It's tied to a variety of things, but most importantly in real estate, tied to two things. The first is deal seasoning. And there's a few reasons why. And I use the term deal seasoning and not experience because I feel like real estate deal seasoning better encapsulates the concept. And that is, in real estate, no two properties are the same. No two deals are the same. No two partnerships, no two partnership structures are the same. And as a result, the more partnership structures you see, the more deals you negotiate, the more properties you see, the more corners that you drive by, the more markets you've been in, the more seasoned you are. And therefore, the more qualified you are to make the assumptions that ultimately drive the outputs. And therefore, the more seasoned you are, the more value you have. And you go, okay, well, Spencer, that's so obvious. But what does that mean in context? Well, a few things. First off, if right now you're getting seasoned as a hotel asset manager and you really want to be in apartment development, that seasoning is almost worthless. It really is. I spent a decade plus in residential land development. And as soon as I went to NML, that seasoning had virtually zero value. And I was a mid-30s associate working next to 25-year-olds making the same pay as I. And at first, it was a little bit of a hit to my ego. It was a little frustrating. I'm like, what do you mean? I have all this experience in real estate. No, that experience is largely worthless. And now, in fairness, that experience allowed me to accelerate my career a bit faster than the 25-year-old because there's some things that you could see and you could move faster. Nevertheless, I had to basically start all over from a deal seasoning standpoint. And so if you're on a path right now that is not seasoning you on the path you want to be, you need to get off that path. Now, probably for many of you, that's why you're going to Georgetown right now. But that's the first principle. And so understanding what that path is critical. And this is a message that oftentimes is challenging for undergrads to hear because they don't know what they want to do. For grad students, you all have the maturity to say, I really want to do industrial, value-add industrial. That sounds so interesting. I want to do value-add industrial in the Inland Empire of California, right? Like you have the maturity to make that conclusion. And because of that, you can then pick the firm that's going to allow you to get deal season. That's number one. The second, also an obvious point, but this is critical, is network. And I knew this point. People talk about it since I was in my first year in the business. It's all about your network. It's all about your network. It's all about your network. But no two networks or not all networks are the same. And so when I had been in the business for 10, 11 years, I had a network. What was my network? It was some broke builders in the Pacific Northwest, a few developers, most of them also broke in the Pacific Northwest, some brokers, many had left the industry, some people who had survived or tried to survive. One guy in particular that I still have this great relationship with. In fact, he now runs a pretty big regional development firm. And that's a great relationship that I have to this day. But most of my network was either that or people in Latin America. and largely in Panama. And because I was in residential land development, most of those were either my competitors, and I knew a few of them. But when you're a foreigner developing in a foreign country, your competitors don't like you that much, unfortunately, right? And even though Panama is a very welcoming place for international business, there's still an element of like, who are you treading on my turf? And so I didn't have, even my competitors, I didn't have that strong of a relationship with. And outside of that, it was contractors and our local operating partner. My point is not a network that was going to get me down the path that I wanted to be. And so part of going back to school, and I think this is the case for many of you at Georgetown, is I needed to build a Class A network. And I use the term build intentionally. It doesn't just automatically happen. You don't just enroll at Georgetown and immediately you have this network. It takes work. It's a lifetime endeavor every single week now. And in fact, today I'm even more intentional than I have ever been about building and strengthening my network. And I learned that from Glenn Lowenstein. The power of Glenn is that over a 40-year career, he has built a reputation as one of the premier thinkers in the industry. And so the leaders of the big firms that you think of all know Glenn as someone who has pioneered some strategies at some very legitimate firms that have led the way. So for instance, he was one of the pioneers of the mixed use development trend post GFC. Lionstone kind of coined this idea of you get synergies between uses and develop some of the premier mixed use developments around the country. And Glenn was kind of the father of that. Glenn developed the first non-office development strategies at Hines. And as a result, what he's done is he's built this reputation. And over time, he has these amazing relationships. But what is so cool about Glenn, and what I've learned from him, is he never stops networking, and he doesn't discount anyone that he talks to. So he'll get off this call with this 25-year-old who just graduated from UT and has been spending a year at one of Blackstone's operating companies. And he'll come back and say, I met this amazing person and I learned this or that about this person. And it's like, he has this mentality of everyone can add value to everyone, and everyone can add value in some unique way. And there's this synergy around a network. And so deal seasoning a network, and it all relates to that path. And if you're just intentional about deal seasoning and networking along your path, that's how you accelerate a successful path in real estate. Now there's the technical component. We can get into that. And obviously at ACRE, we talk a lot about technical, but deal seasoning and network, and then being intentional about it. And so that's the big piece. A couple others. One is always have, I assume many of you are open to a job in the next 5 years, right? If you haven't yet, you need to buy and read the 2-hour job search. It's not real estate specific, but it is relevant to real estate. Go to ACRE, download for free the company database. Everyone should have a LAMP list. That's basically a list of real estate companies organized by priority, that if you got a job offer tomorrow, you'd take it from. And it should be probably 40 companies. Everyone on this call should have those 40 companies and know them. Even if you're not looking for a new job tomorrow or even 2 years from now, my guess is because you're a graduate school, you'd be interested in a job in the next 5 years. Those 40 companies, you need to meet and get to know and build a genuine relationship with at least one person at every one of those companies. And I promise you, if you do, you'll get a job at one of those companies. You never ask for a job when you call them, right? It's not about that. It's about building a genuine relationship with someone at each one of those companies. Someone who hopefully is kind of a lateral to you, or is in a position that you would love to move into. So maybe they're in a senior associate position. You want to move into a senior associate position. You start building a relationship with that person. And I can get into the whys. I think you can imagine what those are. The last piece, and this is just practical advice. I gave the first piece of practical advice, which is around networking. That's the lamp list and meeting someone, everyone. On the deal seasoning side, every single person on this call, and you're already too old if you haven't started. Well, I should say that. Everyone on this call, we're all old, okay? Therefore, if you haven't yet started a deal list, you should have started yesterday. Start one. And what a deal list, basically, it is a list of every deal that you've ever done, every deal that you've ever underwritten, whether that deal was consummated or not. You should have that list. Your deal sheet is what I think we call it on the blog. And you can go to ACRE, download our free deal sheet. It's my deal sheet. And I got this advice when I was a 22-year-old, and I have kept this deal sheet for 20 years. And it is, first off, really fun. It's like a diary of everything I've done in 20-something year career. Every deal that I've underwritten, what the property type was, what the size was, who the parties to the deal were. And over time, it's $30-something billion. And so when Nolan introduces me and says Spencer's underwritten over 30 million, is closed over 5 million, that comes from a deal sheet that a future investor can say, yeah, prove it. And I can pull the deal sheet up and say, here is the 5-something billion that I've done. And that is the evidence of your deal season. And so it's one thing to be deal season. It's another thing to be able to prove it. And that's where your deal sheet comes in. If you haven't started a deal sheet, my guess is most of you on this call haven't, because most in the industry don't have one. Start it tonight. Think back to however long you've been in industry and start adding to your deal sheet and try to fill in the gaps from previous years. And then keep that deal sheet every quarter, update it. Put a notification on your calendar to update your deal sheet. Pays incredible dividends to you in the life of your career. Anyway, I'll stop. I've gone now 50 minutes, and I'd committed to 6. I'm happy to go longer too, by the way. I just want to be sensitive to Nolan, your schedule. Happy to take questions. Also happy if y'all are bashful to take questions offline. I'm always happy to do one-on-one. So any of you, feel free to reach out. Love talking one-on-one with students, helping in any way I can. So anyway, Nolan, I'll let you kind of guide us from here.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely open it up for questions. So if anyone has questions, you can definitely raise your hand. We ask that you do turn on your camera and ask questions if you have any at this time. And I guess I can start that off. I do have a question. For myself, I'm not actually in the real estate industry now. I'm actually in corporate finance, and I want to transition into real estate acquisitions and development. So as you mentioned, kind of like the deal seasoning and making a deal sheet. If you're not working on any actual projects, how would you do that? Would that be still kind of, if I go out on my own, I see kind of a property, if I'm kind of developing a deal that may not actually come to fruition, would I still add something like that to my deal sheet as experience?
Yeah, to answer your direct question, absolutely. The easiest way to get some deal seasoning is to do hypothetical deals, and just make a footnote in your notes on your deal sheet that was kind of you could call it an internship experience, however you want to call it. But the point is, go to download OMs. There's several places you can find offering memorandums. Crexi is the easiest, CREXI.com. And I mean, there are tens of thousands of OMs that you can download. You have to sign an NDA to do so. And then you can download the OM, and then you can start analyzing those deals. I think the key, though, is to have some narrative around that. So don't just download the OM, drop it into a model that you found on ACRE, and call it good. What I would say is download the OM. If you want to use one of our models, fine. What's better is you build a model from scratch, because then now you demonstrate not just that you understand how to put inputs in, but you actually understand how to build a model and see some outputs. And then write a narrative around that. So based on a narrative that has strengths, weaknesses, some conclusions. Maybe do some market report. I'm guessing Georgetown gives you access to, say, a CoStar license. Pull the CoStar submarket report. Have that help guide what your assumptions are. The key to those sort of exercises is you need evidence that you had done it, right? If you're working full time and you have a live deal, you don't necessarily need that sort of narrative. In fact, you probably can't retain it. It would break an NDA you had. But if you're doing it on your own, you're going to want to keep that narrative in that file, and that's the evidence of the level of work that you did. Let me answer a question that you didn't ask, which is, how do you break into real estate when you are coming from a different industry? Now, the first thing you're doing is you're getting a degree that demonstrates commitment to the industry, and that's valuable. The lamp list, though, is going to be key. It's picking 40 companies that you want to work with, meeting someone each one of those companies, building rapport with them. I can't tell you how, for me, incredibly successful. Just that exercise. And I never asked for a job from any of them. The job came as a natural result of building rapport with 40 people. So yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Hey, Spencer, I have a
I
question.
see no CoStar license. So if you don't have CoStar license, there's a lot of free reports, CBRE, Cushman, JLL, they'll put out free reports. So you can use those to help you make assumptions, and then bug your administration about getting a CoStar. Like, of course, CoStar is kind of a pain. I know we're being recorded. Sorry if CoStar's hearing this. They're kind of a pain about licenses. They're very stingy about it. And anyway, so I'm not surprised to hear that. It's unfortunate. But there are some others. Crexi, for instance, does have some data. I don't know if there's an opportunity to work with a Crexi or one of those at the university. But anyway, you get the point. It's like, try to find some resources that can help inform your inputs so that you can then show that as evidence when you write some narrative in your deal sheet. So someone else was going to ask a question. Was it Max?
Yes. Yeah, I have a quick question. How would you say growing your technical skills and financial modeling skills kind of help with your own, soft skill and general market development, and kind of vice versa?
Yeah. So I talk a lot about networking and deal seasoning, and they are the value points. The networking gets you in the door. The technical skills get you the job. Okay. So Nolan, for lamp list, 40 companies, meet the people at some point in time. And you're in finance, so you understand the basics, but you still have to understand how to model real estate cash flows. And to Max's question, you have to have the technical skills. The reason that we created Adventures in CRE was there is an organization like SABRE at Cornell called AREC, the Associate Real Estate Council. And in one of our very first meetings, just like this, and we had an alumni come, and he spoke, and he said, the very first thing he said was, if you don't do anything for the next 2 years other than focus on learning real estate financial modeling, do that, because that's what's going to get you your job. And Michael and I went, we don't know anything about real estate financial modeling. I came from a boutique firm. I did a little bit. Michael came from construction, had none. Michael couldn't do equal sum in Excel. And Michael, who's a little neurotic, went, oh, I'm not going to get a job, and I'm going to be saddled with hundreds of thousands of debt. And I went, oh, I got to master this skill. And that's ultimately what drove our need. It was really a need to master the skill and then demonstrate to employers, convince employers that we had this skill. So yeah, it's key to getting the job, Max, but you don't get in the door unless you do the network piece of it. Yeah.
Spence, I had a question.
Yeah.
I've been interviewing recently, and one question that's come up often that I hadn't expected was, what is your favorite formula? What's your favorite, I guess, thing to do in Excel? How would you answer that question, and what kind of answer would impress you?
Index match. It is like, now, by the way, Excel has introduced a new function, I think it was 2019, that could eliminate index match. The problem with all of these new functions, like as soon as Microsoft rolled out Microsoft 365 and all this, and they started adding these new functions, here's the problem with those new functions. Anyone who's using an older version of Excel, and there's a lot, most real estate firms still are using 2017 or even 2013, all those functions are worthless. And therefore, if you're going to build a model that is transferable across firms, you're going to share a model with anyone, you can't use any of the newer functions that Excel has come out. So index match, what's so cool about it is, I don't know if Microsoft intended for it to be used in the way that it is, but it's a very efficient way to find a range, a very efficient way to find a range, far more efficient than VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, which are very resource intensive. And so index match, it's a really fun, not very intuitive, and so it takes a little bit of time to master. But once you have it, you go, this is such an efficient formula. So that's how I would answer it. Yeah. Now, why would someone ask that? I mean, maybe they're trying to, it kind of sounds like, I don't know, like that, that would not be a question I would ask. I would just put you through a technical interview, and that's how I'd learn whether you have the technical skills. That sounds like a silly question. Kind of like if, you have an airplane, a 757, how many golf balls could you fit inside it? Like one of those kind of questions that supposedly is supposed to find out like how someone thinks through problems, but I just think are silly questions that ultimately don't make any difference in the hiring. But that's my personal opinion. And that's how I would answer the question. So great one. Any other questions?
Yeah, Spencer, I have one.
Oh yeah.
What do you think about the current state of, the economy and the real estate, and how do you see things going from here? I mean, it's tough to predict anything, but just high level, what do you think are, the next big asset classes and how things are going to play out?
Yeah. So the chessboard has been thrown up in the air and all the pieces have come down, and how it's going to be set back up is a master skill. It is a very turbulent time. And we're looking at a 10-year treasury that's above 4.6 right now. There are very few firms in real estate that have a house view or had a house view 90 days ago that contemplated a 10-year treasury above 4.5. And if you spend too much time on Twitter, X, there's people talking about a 6% 10-year treasury. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are edge cases where that could be the case. But there's a real possibility we could hit a 5% 10-year treasury. The problem with a 5-year 10-year treasury is everything ladders up from there. And it wasn't too long ago where we were all comfortable with a 4.5 cap multifamily and a sub-4 industrial. And what that means is a lot of, I don't want to use the word distress because that's a more complicated thing, but there's a lot of rethinking the world. And so that's a macro take, and it's kind of scary for you all. Now you're not, it's scarier for those who are full-time students right now and have to get a job in 6 or 9 months. And I'm not being doom and gloom at all, because my second half side of this is anytime you have a reshuffling the board, if you're not scared but greedy, and I paraphrasing Warren Buffett, you will do very, very well. And I look back, I was scared. 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, it was like, just survive. Just make sure that my kids don't starve, right? And because of that, I missed out on some of the best opportunities of my career. We call them legacy years. These are the years that you could be a blind squirrel and still find the best of the acorns. If you started a real estate company in 2010 or 2011 or 2012, you look brilliant today, right? And so that's the opportunity, but it's a scary moment. And there's a lot of change that is happening. And we'll see. Now, in terms of trends, I think not specific to real estate, I think Gen AI is going to have an outsized impact on operations. And so having that skill is going to be very valuable to you all. You're going to be expected to herald in the Gen AI era. And so you better know how to implement it in your jobs, or there's going to be someone else who does. So that's a non-real estate trend, very real, very, very real. And it's moving incredibly fast. In fact, let me give you one piece of advice to help with that. I get in my email box every morning. This is the first thing I read when I wake up. And it's called the just make sure I get it right. The Superpower Daily. It's kind of a cheesy name. Superpower Daily. You Google it, you'll find it. It's basically a synopsis of what's changed in AI in the last 24 hours. And it's a really good way to kind of keep on top of those. And then we are thinking a lot about that at ACRE. And so I hope that we're creating some content that's valuable to you as you're positioning yourself for this new era. In terms of property types, that's a hard one.
I think
there is go ahead.
I think it translates into data centers for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
A lot of processing. And so that's a good point. So that, you all are smart. So, in this new world, where does the capital flow to? It's simply a demand thing, and data center. That's a great example. Yeah. Good example. It feels like industrial and multifamily are overbought. No offense to almost everyone on the call who wants to be in multifamily industrial. It feels a bit overbought. At the same time, there's some really strong tailwinds to both of those property types. And so I'm not going to bet against multifamily or industrial. But I think that there are some very real niches like data centers that have some opportunity. Yeah, really good question. I want to be sensitive, Nolan, to you all's time. I know you have a happy hour that's coming up. So maybe we'll go one more question.
Hey, Spencer.
Yeah, Charlie.
Regarding your suggestion for the second recommendation about the networking, and I am a full-time student here right now, and I have had some alumni and practitioner in real estate on LinkedIn, and I got a question about what kind of topic would you recommend to talk with people when do the networking? Is more career development focusing or technical questions?
So how do I approach those conversations? Is that really what you're asking?
No, yeah, I already get someone in connection already, but I want to make further steps with the people. So what kind of suggestion would you mind to talk with them?
Yeah. So I use the term relationship very intentionally. What you want to do is find common rapport with those individuals. And it's really about understanding who they are, what they do, what makes them tick, what they like about their job. You've probably all heard we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Like if there is ever like that concept to apply to something, it's this. You get on a call with them and you just ask a lot of questions, and then you shut up and listen and just hear them out. What do you like about what's your day-to-day like? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And then they're going to describe, like, for instance, I'm underwriting industrial, and then you're going to dig in further. So what are the inputs that are hard right now for you to support? Why? Oh, that's interesting. And what are you seeing with interest rates, right? And you just dig and just let them talk. And the only question that is self-serving in those discussions, in my opinion, is a question that you ask near the end, which is, And hopefully you've built some rapport where they can openly answer this question. And that is, hey, Carlos, you've been in my position before. In fact, you were at Georgetown 3 years ago. If you were in my position again, what would you do next in order to find a job doing something like you're doing right now? And Carlos, who wants to help me, by the way, that the interesting thing about like that sort of rapport building is these people really do genuinely want to help. And Carlos is going to have some very relevant advice for me. And he'll give hopefully candid advice. I would do this and I would do that. But otherwise, it's just simply about getting to know that person and what their job's like and what the firm is like and what do they like and what don't they like and why did they choose that path and had they thought about other paths, and if so, what paths and why didn't they choose it, and where did they go to school and what do they like to do for fun and where have they traveled, and you know what is their pickleball rating or whatever it may be, right? It's about building genuine rapport. That's what matters most. It's about building a relationship with someone that lasts your and their entire career.